Hello and welcome to the NBE Basketball Report podcast. This is Raphielle Johnson, the West Coast editor of the NBE Basketball Report. And today's podcast will focus on the UCLA Bruins. 0-2 to start the season with very disappointing efforts and losses to Loyola Marymount and Middle Tennessee State, the latter of which came without the services of Reeves Nelson, who was suspended for that game for conduct detrimental to the team, I guess you would say, some attitude issues. He's now back, and the Bruins have some time off between that disappointing defeat and the Maui Invitational, which they begin on Monday against host Chaminade. Luckily, I was able to get in touch with Jon Gold of the LA Daily News, and we were able to talk about the Bruins extensively, what's going on with the team right now, whether or not they can fix them, and the importance of that 2012 recruiting class that features the likes of Jordan Adams and Kyle Anderson, and they've also got a good shot at landing the top player in the class, Shabazz Muhammad. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jon, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, with us now is Jon Gold of the LA Daily News, talk about UCLA. The Bruins off to an 0-2 start, and they'll be playing next week in the Maui Invitational. Jon, thanks for coming on to the show. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Good. Not a problem. Thanks for finally being able to catch up. We had different suspensions and other issues, so a little bit delayed on that. But
more crazy out of UCLA every week. It seems like there's something.
Definitely. Starting off with that, Reeves Nelson suspended on Monday. Tuesday they get beat by 20, and then he's reinstated on Wednesday. How's that situation unfold for UCLA?
Well, Reeves has always been a combustible guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I don't get is that Ben Howland always used to seem to recruit the same kind of guy. And then, they make it to 3 straight Final Fours. And I think losing those 3 straight Final Fours really kind of set something off in Ben Howland's head that he has to start recruiting more scorers. I got to start recruiting guys who are going to keep up with the Derrick Roses, who are going to be able to score that many points.
Mm-hmm.
And so he changes kind of this model player that he's looking for, and he starts going to the scoring guys who can do that kind of stuff. Well, with that comes sort of inherent selfishness, or I wouldn't say selfishness, but kind of that scoring mentality means, well, if I'm going to get the points, I'm going to be the star and all that kind of stuff. And he's had these kind of back-and-forth battles with Reeves Nelson before. He's had to speak with him in private. He's had to deal with Nelson's coachability, we'll call it, in the past. And this is just kind of the latest flare-up. That's actually why I didn't really go too crazy covering it. Was, how many times are we going to have to cover the same kind of thing with the same guy?
Mm-hmm.
And so, the way it unfolded and the fact that he was suspended for 1 game only, and it happened on a Monday, and then by Wednesday after a 20-point loss, he's back. I don't think it's Ben Howland caved or anything like that. I think Howland, I think Nelson probably just needed to be taught kind of a quick little lesson, and he was, and they kind of moved forward. So I think that's sort of where they're at right now.
Okay. Staying in the front court, another kind of enigmatic figure, I guess you'd say, Joshua Smith. He had that tweet that made some publicity after Friday night's loss. Comes back with 15 and 9 against Middle Tennessee, but it really didn't matter given the course of the game. He really hasn't seemed to lose too much weight. Where are they with Joshua Smith right now?
Well, I think you just nailed it on the head at the end. He didn't lose the weight,
mm-hmm.
and I'm a fat guy, so I can't I can't be the one to say lose the weight. I can't be as a fat guy myself. I know how hard it is.
Yeah.
And we're not talking, to be quite frank, we're not talking about just a guy who likes to eat food.
Yeah.
The way his body looks, the way he and I talked about food before, all this kind of stuff leads me to believe that he might have kind of I wouldn't call it an eating disability, because you think of only sort of the skinny people having those, but he might have the opposite of that. And it's going to cost him in the long run. And the way he's looked this season, sluggish, prone to fouling, he doesn't bend over well, all that kind of stuff. I never believed that he was going to, have a one-year epiphany and all of a sudden come back and look like Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah.
I never expected that, but I did expect him to look better than he has so far and to look better over the summer. And, to me, that goes right back to Howland, and it goes right back to discipline, and it goes right back to getting these kids. And you mentioned the tweet, and that's interesting that you mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Smith went on Twitter following the loss to Loyola Marymount, and I think his exact words are straight up lost to some bums, LOL.
Yeah.
That's immaturity.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else besides that. And during that Final Four run, you had guys like Darren Collison, you had guys like Kevin Love, you had guys like Russell Westbrook, you had guys, Josh Shipp, Alfred Aboya, Luc Richard Mbamute, like all of these guys were well above their years. They might have had some of the same kind of issues of, we're in college and we're having fun and doing all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't covering those teams, but even just watching them from afar, I never got the sense that they were immature players. Mm-hmm. This team is chock full of them, and that is not a good recipe under Ben Howland.
No, definitely isn't. We can kind of talk about the Ware twins a little bit, but I want to move on to the point guard position because that's one where you kind of look for maturity to come from. With Eric Jones, they get Jeremy Anderson back. Do they have enough to be, a real contender to win a conference championship at the point guard position right now?
That's a tough question. I think in a normal Pac-12 year, Pac-10, whatever, normal, whatever this conference is called year, I think I would probably say no. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people forget that it wasn't just Derek Williams who left the conference last season from Arizona.
Yep.
Oregon lost good players. Washington lost awesome. Isaiah Thomas was a fantastic point guard. Oregon State lost a couple guys. Stanford lost Jeremy Green. Washington State lost Klay Thompson. The level of stardom in this conference is so low that I do believe that if in 8 games, 10 games, they start playing some zone defense, and Ben Howland finally realizes that, and if they not only play zone defense, but if they just play better, because I don't think Zeke Jones is anywhere near as actually bad as he's been. A lot of people are abandoning that ship. I don't think he's that bad. I think he's just sort of playing poorly right now, and that happens sometimes. Yeah. And if they can fix that, I think they'll be fine going into conference play because the rest of the conference stinks. Cal's okay, but they're not great. Arizona's okay, but they're not great. Washington's okay, but they're not great. UCLA, I think, has the best potential to be great if they address what's been ailing them.
Okay. Another issue on the perimeter I've seen these last 2 games, the amount of 3-point shots they've taken, for the front court power that this team has. To take as many threes as they've had, I think they're well over 30 3-pointers over 2 games. Yep. Is that an issue in terms of like on-court decision-making? Or maybe, there needs to be a little bit more done from a strategy standpoint to make sure they work the ball inside?
Well, it's an interesting question because I always come from the standpoint of you play as well as your defense is playing. Mm-hmm. And, just like the UCLA football team, which is also a joy to cover, it's like when you go down 4 touchdowns, I don't care how good your running game may be. Mm-hmm. You have to score points and fast. Well, if your defense stinks in basketball and all of a sudden you're down 12 points, I don't care how good Josh Smith is, those are 20-second possessions. Yeah. And when you're, a cocky 18 to 22-year-old and you think that your shot is great, you're going to take those 3-pointers if you're open. I think the problem is that, Ben Howland decided not to start Josh Smith because he doesn't want him to get into the foul trouble. I think that, to me, that is just such... To me, that's a kind of a losing mentality. Yeah. You go out there to score more points than the other team. I don't care if Josh Smith has 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes if you're up 10-0. Then the other team is playing at your pace. Mm-hmm. And so I think, the number of 3-point shots has been a direct reflection to just how poor they've been on defense. They're having to deal with these huge deficits, and they absolutely cannot shoot their way out of that, I don't think.
Okay. The Ware twins, I guess they've been kind of uneven just like everyone else. Along with them, Anthony Stover, whenever he can return from his shoulder injury, how do you see those guys kind of fitting in? How much help can they give, some of these returnees?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I have been asked about the Wares. I've never seen them play, extensively before I started watching with UCLA.
Yeah.
And this infatuation that Ben Howland has with them, to me, is honestly kind of shocking. They would be, if they're on the same team with Luke and Alfred Aboya, and just kind of, hard-nosed, gritty defensive players, they don't see the floor.
Mm-hmm.
They're just as low on the totem pole as Brendan Lane is. I think he has the exact same game that the both of them have.
Yeah.
And so to consider them defensive stoppers, to even have the mindset that David Ware can play the three, there's a reason that it stinks to cover UCLA when they don't let us watch any practices before the season.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I never thought that they were going to win the conference in the first place. I thought they had a chance, but, in the media poll, I was going with Cal, just because I love Jorge Gutierrez. But, when we don't have any clue how they're going to match up, how they're going to utilize David Ware, well, that first game against Loyola Marymount, I thought that told you everything you needed to know.
Yeah.
And then you come back with them and you play Travis Ware the minutes that he's playing. I mean, these guys aren't playing very good defense and they're not getting rebounds. So if they're not scoring 25 points a game, that's a liability. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Going into Maui, they get Shaman out on Monday. It looks like their half of the bracket may work out, as a softer half of the bracket, at first glance. Would it be a surprise to you if we see them playing for the championship on Wednesday night?
With the state that they're in right now, with the sheer level of disarray, it would be a shock to me.
Okay.
I think Ben Howland, you cannot really question his credentials.
Mm-hmm.
You can't question his ability to coach this game. I think in 2011, after the 4-year run that they've had from 2008-9 to this season right now, I think you can definitely question his ability to interact with these 18 to 22-year-old guys. And I don't think it's going to be a quick fix, is what I'm saying. I think Sean Miller at Arizona is a coach that I see being able to make 2 tweaks, and all of a sudden the team looks completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Ben Howland has that kind of relationship with the guys. I don't know if he's that kind of coach to just turn on a light bulb and all of a sudden things work. I think it's going to be an 8-10 game process where they're feeling each other out, where they're really kind of figuring out how to utilize all that phantom awesome depth that they have up front that we've kind of seen is maybe not that awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't figure that out, it's going to be a lot tougher road than just Maui.
All right. Looking a little bit ahead, their 2012 recruiting class, Kyle Anderson, they're clearly not done yet. What are your early thoughts on that recruiting class and what UCLA was able to do?
I think it's just further cements the notion to me that Howland has changed his fundamental goal in coaching basketball. If you look at the level of recruits that Howland got from 04 to 06, 2004 to 2006, to me, is vastly different than the level of guys that he's gotten from 07 and on. And the difference is he got coachable players who were going to go give him 160%, and he surrounded those guys with a couple stars.
Mm-hmm.
That 2008 class, to me, was the beginning of the end. Because I've always said unless you are one of the 3 schools that is able to churn out one and done year after year after year, and that's schools like North Carolina, Michigan State, obviously wherever John Calipari is.
Yeah, Kentucky.
Unless you're one of those schools, you have to find guys who are going to play for 4 years. I don't care if they're superstars for 4 years. You have to layer your classes. And that 08 class had the number 1 ranked point guard in Drew Holiday. I think the number 5 ranked point guard in Jeremy Anderson. I want to say the number 3 shooting guard in Malcolm Lee. I want to say the number 6 power forward in Drew Gordon. And I think the number 11 center in Bobo Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 5 guys who all thought that they were going to be the savior at UCLA at the exact same time.
Yeah.
You can't do that to me. Not if you are a demanding defensive-oriented coach. So he gets those guys in 2008, comes back in 2009 with Tyler Honeycutt, Reeves Nelson, Brendan Lane. Brendan Lane to me is the kind of guy that you need to complement the other guys, but, obviously Honeycutt left and Nelson's unhappy. And then you flash forward to last year, you got Matt Carlino. He already left. It just seems like year after year, his recruiting has changed. The style of guy he's going for has changed. And now you ask about this class. Jordan Adams, Kyle Anderson, great offensive players, suspect defensive players, and now you're asking a 6'8" guy to guard a point guard. And with the level of talent that's been it's been a huge drop off in talent over the last couple of years. We all agree with that. We all know that. But you got to find your point guard. And I understand why he doesn't have Carson. I understand why he didn't get Josiah Turner. I really had no clue why he was going after guys like Ray McCallum, and there was another guy he was going for, Trey something, and I'm forgetting his name. Forgetting his last name. Say that again?
Trey Ziegler?
Yeah, Trey Ziegler. There you go. Guys that, they went down to the wire for, and they ended up not getting.
Yeah.
And they lost out on other guys that they needed because they were, chasing these, to me, that were pipe dreams. I never thought Ray McCallum or Trey Ziegler were coming this way. And I think they are, in a level of disarray. And if they don't get Shabazz Muhammad and if they don't get Tony Parker, I think Muhammad is a pretty big, pretty solid lean towards UCLA. But, they're 0-2. If they have another 14-18 season, can you really see him coming?
Yeah, that's true.
That would be... I know he has great ties here. I know they've worked that really well. I know that's the guy they want, and I think they think that they're getting him and it's locked up. But man, if it's another bad season, I'd be surprised. And then losing Dominic Artis to me is just a shock. Mm-hmm. That's a guy whose game I love. That to me is a Pac-12 point guard.
Yeah.
It's baffling to me how they haven't been able to get that point guard in, which is a position that UCLA dominated for a stretch of 5 or 6 seasons. They had one of the top guys in the country, not just the conference, between Farmar and Collison. Now look what they have.
Yeah, hard to argue with you there. Final question before I let you go. Going back to Shabazz Muhammad, could this season get to a point where whether or not they land him can, affect the outcome of Ben Howland's job status? That's a great question. That is a great question.
I think Howland is safe. I think Howland is safe in the idea that those 3 straight Final Fours, while he didn't win a championship, that gives him a level, of security that's kind of tucked into his back pocket. But things are clearly trending downward. And an 0-2 start at UCLA with losses to, Loyola Marymount, Tennessee State. Yeah, you almost can't justify those away. And so, like you're saying, if they don't get a guy who is a clear program changer in Shabazz, I really do think he's that good. I think he's going to have some explaining to do. And, Paulie's reopening. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything is going to happen this year. Barring some kind of crazy epic meltdown, I don't think anything would actually happen this year. But they need the money from Paulie to start coming in. Mm-hmm. And the attendance so far at the sports arena has been drop-dead dreadful. And they cannot afford that. This is a public university with an athletic department that's always struggling for, financially. Mm-hmm. I would be surprised if anything happened this year, but I don't think that leash is that long anymore. Just because, the recruiting. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing that got Dan Guerrero to stick behind Rick Neuheisel for this long, was at least you could say, yeah, they might be 4-8, but we have the number 2 quarterback in the country.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, we're not doing that well, but they have a top 15 class. Well, if the players aren't coming either, then I think you have some explaining to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hard to argue with you there. Just want to say thank you for taking some time out to come on to the podcast. People can follow you on Twitter at @TheCoolSub, correct?
There you go. Nice, the cool sub.
Yeah, all right. John, thanks again for coming on to the air, and we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, anytime. I love talking basketball. It's fun talking UCLA basketball, except when it's talking about 20-point losses to Middle Tennessee State.
Yeah,
it's baffling.
Yeah, you definitely can't get used to that. All right, take care.
Yeah, man. But thank you. Yeah, so much for having me.
Yep, thank you. Once again, thanks to John for coming on to the podcast, and as always, thanks to you folks for listening. Hope you enjoyed, and take care.